Here we are. All right, so Maddie, got a question for you.
Fire away.
As a listing agent, you are allowed to call the buyer's lender. True or false?
True. Oh my gosh,
Well,
do
why-
it.
Well, why would the listing agent want to talk to the buyer's lender?
Okay, well, there's a couple of different scenarios that this is going to be a very important checklist item. But right out of the gate, as a listing agent, when you receive that offer, I always pick up that pre-approval or those, the pre-approval, and I check that lender out. Who is that lender? Do I recognize them? And then I'm going to give them a call and just kind of get a feel for where they're at with that buyer and in that pre-approval process. How qualified is that buyer?
Well, it's always good. Make that phone call
Yeah.
as soon as you get something under contract. As a listing agent, you should always introduce yourself and build that rapport
Absolutely.
with that lender, because you need to stay in the loop with that lender just as much as the buyer's agent does.
Yeah, absolutely. They're a member of the transaction. They're just part of the team, just like everybody else.
Yeah, and it's so important to have full transparency in the lending process. If there's a little challenge or a little hiccup in the process, which 90% of the time there always is, it's great if the entire team is aware of that hiccup or that challenge, so everybody can work together.
I think you just had one of these happen on your transaction for you, right?
Yeah, I did. There was a challenge. When I checked in with the lender and the buyer's agent, everybody was like, oh, it's okay. Everything's fine. We just need this little letter, which sounded like, okay,
Yeah.
let's get the letter. And then 3 days before closing, I find out that the little letter that they were waiting on was going to prohibit the buyer from getting their financing. Once I found out about it, I was able to work with the lender, with the homeowners association to get everything that was needed to keep the deal together.
And I'm sure if you would have spoken to that lender maybe earlier on in the process, or maybe had a little bit more of that transparency, something you guys could help solve sooner rather than, days before closing.
Yeah, it's transparency is key, and it's important to have a relationship with everybody involved in the transaction, because the goal for buyer and seller is to get to the closing table.
Yeah.
And it takes a village.
It takes a village. And you gotta know everybody in the village, at least their name.
Yeah,
to be able to problem solve together.
Absolutely. So make sure your listing agent always in touch with the buyer's lender.
Great advice.